exponential growth in Africa is possible, but you need to put a lot of resources to achieve it, and you need to put basically like any other international market, basically.
Well, first of all, Elyes, thank you for joining us for this interview. We're so excited for you to join us at North Africa Com and share some insights about Jumia and its journey. So my first question would just be to ask you a bit about yourself. Could you walk us through your career path and the key milestones that have led you to where you are today?
Yeah, thank you. So I am Elyes Jeribi. Today I am the CEO of Jumia in Tunisia. And before that, I was the Chief Executive Officer of a program called Smart Tunisia. I was under the Ministry of Technology, Communication and Digital Economy in Tunisia. I was in charge of Smart Tunisia program, which is a program of $500 million aiming to create 50,000 jobs in the digital sector in Tunisia. Before it, I co-founded a technology startup between Tunisia and France. And this startup was awarded Best Startup in 2013 by Microsoft Startup Program. And before that, I had another experience with the Tunisian government as well. Just after the revolution of 2011, I was a ministry advisor in the equipment and the transport ministry. And my first professional experience was as a consultant in McKinsey and Company, the strategy and consulting company. And I was based in Paris office, but actually I worked mainly in Western Europe, France, Belgium, Italy, Spain, and also in North Africa. So Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya. So I had an extensive experience of North Africa, thanks to McKinsey. And today, as discussed, I am the country manager, the CEO of Jumia Tunisia, and I had also 1 year during which I was also the country manager of Algeria for a transition period, basically.
Wow. Well, you've had quite an exciting and quite different career journey. And I know it might be a bit hard to narrow down because of you have so many experiences, but would you have one or maybe a handful of key achievements that you think led you to where you are today?
Yeah. So, I mean, in the consulting experience, we really worked in very exciting projects, especially in North Africa. We worked on the Morocco Mall, which is the biggest mall in Africa, which is based in Casablanca. We did also a very exciting job in Libya, actually. So we were in charge of the modernizing of the banking sector in Libya, including the creation of the one of the top 5 biggest bank in North Africa. I worked also with a national strategy for Tunisian government in 2010, working on the digital employment. I'm very proud of the startup I co-founded with my 2 co-founders, basically, because we achieved 1 million of revenues after 2 years, and it was really a great achievement for us. Unfortunately, we didn't go until the end because of competition. In Jumia, also, I am very, one of the big achievements that we did, we basically we created mainstream e-commerce in Tunisia. Today, Jumia, we have a great growth, and today e-commerce is becoming mainstream in Tunisia. To the COVID and the lockdowns, of course, but also thanks also to main actors, including Jumia in Tunisia.
Yeah. Would you mind walking us through that a bit more? Just when you started in Jumia Tunisia, what was it like in Tunisia? What was the ecosystem? What was it like in terms of e-commerce? How popular was it versus where it is today?
Yeah. So just to give you an example, what we were used to do in terms of revenues in 1 month in Jumia Tunisia, today we are doing it in 1 day or less. So this is just to give you an idea in less than 4 years, basically. So this is great. And today, e-commerce and Jumia are becoming mainstream, basically. So a lot of people, including people in the rural area, are using Jumia services. 25% of our deliveries are happening in small cities and even in rural areas in Tunisia. And today, Jumia as a brand is in the top 20 of top of mind brands in Tunisia. So with big brands exactly like in telecom operators and stuff like that. So this is also a big achievement for us.
Yeah, that's huge. And do you think it's because people were unaware of e-commerce before that, or do you think it was because people didn't have the availability because it wasn't accessible to them? Why do you think there was that huge growth from when you started to now?
I think three main things. The first one, we worked a lot and we really succeeded to create a real trust between e-commerce players and the Tunisian consumer. So before Tunisian consumer was very, very scared of e-commerce, and even the e-commerce players that existed before were hybrid players basically. So they had a presence in the online scene, but they were mainly stores, and they have offline stores with real warehouses, and they basically people will go see the product online and they will buy it offline basically. So it was not really a purely online because of the issue of trust. People needed to see someone and to see the product. So we worked on this first. And how did we work on this? We just empowered a law. There is a law in Tunisia of e-commerce dating from 2000 saying that any consumer can change his mind in 10 days. So in e-commerce, when you receive something, you have 10 days to give it back, even by changing your mind. And this is huge, basically.
Yeah, I
So
can imagine.
yeah, this is one. Two, it's the offer. Basically, before Jumia and even Jumia, I mean, 5 years ago, we didn't have enough offer. Basically, we had some electronics and maybe some low-value fashion. Today, when you see Jumia, for example, it's more than 100,000 references, basically, so different products. And these products cover all the basic needs and the needs of the Tunisian consumers. Yes, there is always consumer electronics, phones, but there is also fast-moving consumer goods, everyday basics, cosmetics,
Yeah.
fashion, uh, also home, cooking materials and cookware things. So there is a lot of things. So this is also the second point. And the third point, awareness, because e-commerce player and e-commerce Tunisia was only going inside the online platforms, including Facebook, and that's it. And people who are using Facebook in Tunisia, I think the penetration rate of Facebook in Tunisia is around 80%, which is huge, especially in
Mhm.
Africa, the biggest penetration rate in Africa. But still, people, when they see you only in Facebook or in the internet, they still see you as something a little bit weird, special. So what we really changed, we had a massive presence basically on the mass media, basically on TV, billboards, radio, and this was a huge change. And today, all the other actors of e-commerce in Tunisia are doing this always. So people trust e-commerce, see the relevance of e-commerce, and are aware of the presence of e-commerce thanks to offline media.
Yeah. Wow. And do you think this level of trust that you talk about across Tunisia, do you think that citizens across the country are going to continue to embrace further digital innovation, or do you think people still struggle a little bit?
I think it's related to the actors, to us, basically. What I see really is the consumer is ready, basically. So when we offer something which is good, trustworthy, and relevant to the consumer are embracing it. So to give you an example, we just launched the Jumia Pay, so the payment via bank cards, which is something very basic in Europe, but it is still something new in Tunisia, at least not at big level. And we launched it like 6 months ago, and today we have an exponential growth on this specific part, which is Jumia Pay. So people, when you give them the opportunity to test and to try new things, even though technology and innovative, and when they found that they are trustworthy and they are relevant for their needs, and they are aware of them, because they need also to be aware, they embrace them and they use them. So I think the issue today is on us and the actors, basically. Every time we offer new things, people are embracing them when they worth it, basically.
Yeah, so clearly you see a massive opportunity there in Tunisia and in the region. So what would you see as the next chapter for growth? in Tunisia?
I think the biggest next chapter of growth is everyday goods, basically. Yeah. Today in Tunisia, I mean, and in North Africa in general, the retail sector is more or less structured. So there is it's in between the situation in sub-Saharan Africa where retail it's really very fragmented, scattered, but also it's not the same level of maturity of Europe, where basically retail and brands like Carrefour or Tesco or whatever are everywhere. So it's in between. And today there is still a place for us to be on the everyday basic needs for customer. And that's why for Jumia, for example, our tagline today is Jumia for every day and for everything you need, basically. So this is the next chapter of growth. And this includes mainly also the what we call the food delivery business, basically. So the quick delivery, I mean 30 to 40 minutes delivery of food, of restaurant, but also other things, including Q-commerce in general. But to be honest, we are still on the food delivery than the Q-commerce. But we think that this is the next growth chapter. And also there is the fintech, basically all the payment sector in North Africa in general. There is a lot of things happening. For example, in Tunisia, we just have the first fintech, mass market payment solution. It's the first launch was launched like 1 month ago. So there is still a lot of place for that, and I think there is a real need from the consumer. So we will see a big growth.
Yeah, you talked about that before with the credit card and being able to pay online, but in the region, it's still quite a cash society. So would you say that there's huge potential to kind of bring in fintech and bring in mobile payments? And if so, how do you plan to kind of gather that trust too? Because there's a lot of lack of trust of paying online, right? And making sure that that is safe. So what is Jumia going to do with expanding that kind of fintech, using credit cards, online payments?
Yeah. So first, our region is very cash-oriented region, and I think this is by obligation. People don't like cash. Cash is expensive. It's complicated to use cash. It's not easy, basically. But today, it is less expensive to use cash than to use other payment means in our region, basically, because credit cards are expensive. There is a lot of fees related to checks. Today in Tunisia, when you pay with a check, you pay a fee for every single check. Imagine that, for every single check over the amount, which is, I mean, this is not imaginable. You cannot imagine this in a more mature market. Banking fees are very, very high. That's why a lot of people are not bankerized at all, basically. So people are using cash by obligation. So I believe that once we give them an alternative, which is relevant, accessible, and cheap, they will use it. And we see this. For the moment, there is no mass market alternative. The first fintech, which is going to the mass market, was launched just 1 month ago. To be honest, the fees are still very regulated by the central bank, so it's still not very, very, very competitive. But the business model of this fintech should be very competitive and very cheap because they don't have a lot of fees, basically. Yeah? But the regulator is a little bit not allowing this because it knows that it will really have a huge growth. So there is a potential for a huge growth, but once the regulator will allow this a huge growth, basically, and the consumers, I think, even though they are still not aware of this, but I am sure once it is on the offering is really live and working well, it will be a huge shift. For Jumia, we are ready, basically. We have the technology, we have the platform. We are working with regulators to convince them to go a little bit more aggressive and to show them that at the end of the day, the consumer will really will profit very much from this, basically. So maybe the banks will suffer a little bit, but I think it will fair suffering and a healthy suffering for everyone, for the ecosystem, for the consumers, and even for them, to make them more aggressive and competitive. But at the end of the day, it will be very good for the economy, for the ecosystems, and for the consumers. So I hope that we will go to this conclusion. And once we are there, I think it will be huge, and Jumia will be very well prepared to be part of this huge transformation. I hope it will happen in the next months, not in the next years.
Yeah, of course. And when you talk about regulators and the issues, are these specific to Tunisia and North Africa, or do you see this across the continent?
No, I think it's more specific to North Africa and especially to the Maghreb area, basically, where banking sector is very much protected. I think sub-Saharan Africa, I mean, at least countries like Kenya and Nigeria are showing us the contrary, basically. Yeah, the fintech is just
Yeah,
booming, and it already boomed, basically. Yeah, we
yeah,
are far way behind them. So that's one of the arguments we are using with our regulators here in North Africa, and showing them how it exploded in countries like Kenya, for example, and how this was good for all the economy, the ecosystems, and the consumers. So
yeah, of course. Now, while we're on the subject of Jumia as a whole, the company, what would you say are your ambitions for Jumia as a company in the next few years? I know we've talked a lot about specifically in Tunisia and a bit in North Africa, but where is Jumia as a company going?
our vision and our ambition is to be the biggest shopping destination in Africa, basically. We want to be a destination for shoppers, for African consumers, not only to buy a smartphone, not only to buy, I don't know, a cosmetic or a shampoo, but to get, to buy, to use, to entertain themselves. We need to be really the first and the biggest destination for African shoppers. And I think we built this platform which is ready for that. We are able, and we want to attract more and more African shoppers. We are able to propose for them innovative products, goods, and also services. And I think also we put in place the platform to monetize all that, basically, including the payment systems. We launched also an advertising platform for the brands, basically. Yeah, we have more than 1 billion visits per year in Jumia as a group, so it's a huge. And we have also a lot of data, so we can basically deliver and propose to our consumers, our visitors, our users a lot of things, thanks to internet, of course.
Yeah, and have you found like over the last year, year and a half, this has grown hugely with people needing different goods from e-commerce, needing everything with, I know COVID in Africa was less, lockdowns and everything than the rest of the world, but did you find there was a pattern across the last year and a half of people really turning more and more across the continent towards e-commerce?
Yeah, the situation, it's a little bit different between North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa regarding this. So North Africa, the lockdowns were a little bit more strict, and so we had some patterns, especially in Tunisia and Morocco, including a more a bigger growth, basically. But what we see in general, it's people are looking more for basic goods and for food, basically. So they are using Jumia more and more for their basic needs. So this is driven by two things. First, people are. It's even harder today with the lockdowns and this type of things to find what you need for your basic needs. Also, people are trying to go less, in the streets. This is one. But also, there is an economic crisis going on today, and we feel it. And people basically they're concentrating much on their basic needs and spending less on the other, the other categories. So just to give you an idea, a big part of our business is going to food compared to the last years, basically in Jumia. Food in all manners, including the daily food, but also the canned food and every type of food.
Yeah, of course. And so when was the launch of Jumia Food? And was that because of COVID or was that planned before and just took off during COVID?
No, actually, it was planned before, and the COVID was like an accelerator, a catalyzer for this. So, I mean, we were already aware that will happen. We were
Yeah.
not aware how quick it will happen, but today it's happening more quickly, I think, than we thought so.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'll just leave with one last question. I mean, this was a really interesting conversation, so I hope you enjoyed it too. But obviously, Jumia is one of the few unicorns on the African continent. And my question for you was, what do you think young African entrepreneurs can learn from your story and Jumia's story and experiences?
I think the first learning is there's a huge potential with this continent. I think the second one it's perseverance. I mean, you need Jumia is there now for like almost 10 years, more or less. So I mean, we didn't become a unicorn from the day to the next, basically. So it's taking time, and I think also I mean, my advice to the young entrepreneurs: you need to put the resources needed to expand yourself in Africa. Jumia went with big investors. We put excellent talent around all the countries to drive this growth, and I think this is really important. So exponential growth in Africa is possible, but you need to put a lot of resources to achieve it, and you need to put basically like any other international market. Basically, you cannot say this is Africa, it's easier, so I will put like less resources. No, you need to put high class international level people. You need to put resources at international level, and also you need to invest a lot of money to educate the market and to get the market basically.
Great. Well, I'm glad that's a great piece of advice to end this interview. So thank you again, Elyes, for your time and the conversation. And we look forward to welcoming you again in a month at North Africa Com 2021.
Thank you. I'm very excited and looking forward to our North African Com. And thank you very much for inviting me.
Of course.